Hi, and welcome back. I just have the PowerPoint on this, so you'll need to follow along with my voice. But I've asked you to read a portion of the chapter, not all of it. I wanted to focus in on women in leadership in particular. This is actually what I taught when I was over in China, so I was looking at a lot of the global issues with women in leadership while I was in China teaching. So these were some of the facts I found, and you can actually take a look at this. It's quite linked. It's not going to work right now, but maybe when you open the PowerPoint, it will. It's quite lengthy, and it just looks at the percentage of women in managerial positions around the world, and it gives you a whole bunch of other statistics if you scroll down. And of course, you can see the US is doing fairly well. We are at 40. And of course, where I was in China, not so good. Africa, of course, very poor percentage of women. We're definitely in North and South America doing much better at managerial positions and women. We'll get into a little more about that. So a lot of people ask right off the bat, are there differences between men and women in the way they lead? And the short answer is yes, there are. So here are some of the conclusions that come out in your textbook. And certainly men are more likely to emerge as leaders in short-term task-oriented teams. Women are more likely to emerge as social leaders in small groups. And I actually firmly believe you can have more than one leader in a group. And sometimes you do need the task leader as well as that social or maintenance leader that's working on the relationship. And all through this course, we've talked about task and relationship and how both are important. And I think we're getting to see the social side much more now. Everyone, even men, are beginning to recognize the need for relationship building. And male leaders still tend to be much more task-oriented, and female leaders more interpersonal. And as research comes out, and we are having this kind of cry for more authentic and interpersonal and relationship-based leadership, women are actually being credited as better leaders. Sorry, guys. But what's interesting is women, again, adopt a more participative or democratic leadership style than men, and they're more open to collaboration and sharing power. So all of the things that we've been talking about that are good things, women tend to do naturally. However, what's fascinating is when they get into top positions, they often leave those skills behind and start acting more authoritarian like their male counterparts, which, I've looked at all your compliance gaining and power activities, and most of you said you did not like legitimate authority and that authoritarian voice. So we know all of this is not good in terms of leadership. Not in every situation, but generally there are some definite advantages to being a little more interpersonally oriented. Some more of these conclusions are that male and female leaders are rated equally effective across studies. However, women are more likely to engage in transformational leadership, and look at the particular element they're bringing out by providing individualized consideration. This means they show people they care, they talk to people more, they develop relationships. And you can go back to gender differences between men and women in just your gender course if you take gender. And this is exactly what women are grow up kind of doing naturally in a social setting. And it's a positive. Men are also likely to be more laissez-faire leaders. I had someone in China challenge this conclusion, but kind of if it's more the if it's not broke, don't mess with it, and they'll walk away from it. Just leave it. And women don't tend to function that way. Much more, again, collaborative, hands-on, change. And this is kind of interesting because men are rated more effectively in what we say highly masculine roles are, and women more effective in less masculine roles. So what's still happening is a gender bias to say if you are a general in the military, you're going to be rated more effectively if you are a man than a woman. If you are a woman and you're a kindergarten teacher, you're going to be rated more effectively than a man. The bias is still there even in higher ed. One of the things that we know is in higher education, all other things being equal, male professors get better evaluations than women, hands down. So we're still tied to roles and identity issues, but what we do know is that women have a skill set that leadership is crying out for right now. And I think we will start seeing, and consequently we are, in terms of past elections, many more female leaders. So I wanted to talk about just culturally what is male, what is female. And so this is, you may have gotten this in your intercultural class if you took that. It's simply the 100-item pan-cultural adjective list. And you can look at what is male associated and what is female associated. And some of the words are not easy to take. Men, you are cruel, cynical, but confident, conceited. These are male associated adjectives. And of course, we still have the problem of a female taking on the male role and then being accused of being the bitch. And certainly that happens. And same, look at some of the female ones. Sexy, shy, dreamy, emotional. Well, I always say all women are emotional, but all men are jerks. And most people don't argue either one of those with me. So this is what we mean when we talk about female style or male style traditionally in gender roles. So this was the masculine feminine dimension. Like I said, I'm bringing a little intercultural into this, and you can see the most masculine countries up there: Slovakia, Japan, Hungary, Austria, China was up there, Great Britain, and then the USA. We are fairly masculine. We have a very big gender gap, and I'm going to share the gender gap report with you in just a moment. We are not considered one of the more equal countries in the world. Your more equitable countries in terms of balancing masculine and feminine are the Northern European countries. So you look there at the bottom: Denmark, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden. And that's where we see the least masculine countries. And those are also typically the countries best rated in terms of equal opportunity for all. And we'll see that in the gender gap report. I'm going to come back to Sheryl Sandberg here in just a minute, but I want to go ahead and pop over to the gender gap report. It's on the lecture PowerPoint link here, and I'll go ahead and open this up. Don't have to read the whole thing. It's a lot of stuff about how the report was done, how scientific it is, and I guess you can trust me or you can read the whole thing, but it is fairly scientific, and it's a worthy study. And they do this every year and look at the gender gap. So what we're talking about when we talk about the gender gap is the idea still that women do not get paid as much as men. We know that. We just had a big issue about that in the World Cup soccer match. And this is not wanting to open, so I'm going to try another avenue real quickly. Hopefully, eventually, that will open on the Blackboard. Otherwise, I'll check the link again. So we are looking at the difference in male-female equality. This report bases it off of 4 different factors. So we'll take a look at that. Again, you don't have to read the whole thing. I want to show you kind of what's important because they spend a lot of time telling you how they measured it and how they came up with the results. But I do want you to look at the 4 factors. So what they're looking for is equality. And the 4 factors they looked at were: 1, economic opportunity and participation. What is the role of gender? Do they have equitable resources for economic participation and opportunity? And they gave you some criteria there. They also look at educational attainment. This is somewhat interesting because the women here are basically winning this one. We have a lot more women going to college than men right now. They also look at health and survival. Interesting here that, again, women are winning this equality gap because we tend to live longer and have better health than men. and the political empowerment. How many women are in political positions around the world? So, don't worry again about all the ways they calculated, but here's the results. Wow, right? So, this is what I wanted to just kind of share with you and have you take a look at. You see up top Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland. This is no surprise. These are the best places to live if you are female and you want equity in everything, from pay to education to health to political opportunities. They are the best winning in the world, if you will. What surprised a lot of my students in China was how far down the United States is. And we're right here. Believe it, well, that didn't help right there, as I attempted to highlight a small part of it. We have equity issues. We are not equitable in this case. So certainly we still have a ways to go. And if you're very interested in this, again, you can read some of the analysis, but a lot of the places around the world are doing much better in a lot of these areas than we are in the United States. I mean, look at the United Kingdom, which is up here, quite a bit better in terms of equality and pay and resources. I'm going to sneeze. Woo, sorry. Well, what's interesting is we are still well above the global average, which was right here. And it was a little bit of a sad day teaching in China because guess where they are? They are, of course, below the average there. And that was disappointing to them because the women are trying to get ahead and the inequity is just too great at this point. So still some issues to overcome. But I hope you see that the United States has a pretty big gender gap in terms of resources. So that's the report. Again, there's much, much more to it. If you want to look at some more of the analysis, you certainly can do that. It's there. I just wanted you to have an idea of what it was. And then I wanted to come back and just have a quick little discussion. Again, this isn't a long chapter, but one of the more famous women to emerge in the last 10 years was Sheryl Sandberg. And if you know who she is, you know she came out with her book, Lean In. And she basically said women are not in leadership positions because they don't ask to be. And this got quite a bit of flack. Some of the conclusions about this were you need to be careful of who you select as a mate. And you must find someone who will be supportive and share equally in the household duties, etc., etc. She says, lean in, ask for what you deserve. This, again, was met with some criticism because she came from a place of a great wealth. She did marry a wonderful mate, and she is the CCO at Facebook, if you did not know who she was. Sorry, I should have given you that background. And it created problems because single moms said, I can't ask for what I deserve because if I tick my boss off, I'm done. That's all I have. And this idea that that's all great to say, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to ask for what I deserve. But a lot of women feel they can't do that. So it's a very interesting issue that she picks out selecting a mate as well as asking for what you deserve. And another big piece of advice was to get a mentor. If we were in the regular classroom, we would have a discussion about this and kind of talk about women and leadership and what you think. Unfortunately, we're kind of stuck to this online forum, but I encourage you to research a little bit more about the gender gap and what Sheryl Sandberg has to say in some of her books, and to think about women in leadership. And we're still facing a very big gender gap right now. For this chapter, I'm most interested that you know the differences between the male and female leaders, those two slides that I talked about, and what the gender gap is and where the U.S. is falling behind. And that's it. Short little lecture today, but hopefully it gives you a little bit more idea about male and female leaders.